It's time to find out who is the best grappler in the UFC right now. Obviously, this is all based on my opinion, so if you don't agree on it, tough luck, man. And you know it's gonna be a controversial one. Anywho, I'll be grading the tier list from S, which is the best grade, all the way down to D, which is the worst. And I also want to mention in this video, you won't see any fighters like Alex Pereira or Israel Adesanya's because this list is focusing on grapplers, so don't expect any stand-up fighters here. Anyways, man, let's start the list with Khamzat Chimaev. I'm gonna go with an A tier. Now, originally I wanted to give him an S tier, but the more I thought about it, he really doesn't deserve it since he's not really that active and we haven't seen him get challenged that much. And here's the thing, you can say what you want about Khamzat, man, that he only has 1 round cardio, but this guy has never lost the first round. He normally ragdolls his opponents and gets them out of there majority of the time at least. The way he was able to control Kamaru Usman in the first round was crazy, and the way he steamrolled Kevin Holland. And you know what's interesting? Something key I noticed about Khamzat is his use of his legs and his feet to control his opponent. Khabib used different techniques to tie his opponent's leg together, but Khamzat, he's much more diverse, but equally effective. Notice how he always incorporates his feet into his grappling, and he's also been tested with someone who has really good takedown defense, like Ikram, a Sambo master who's only been taken down 2 or 3 times from what I've seen in his entire MMA career. So yeah, Khamzat's A ranked, even though you hardly ever see him fight. Next up, we got Charles Oliveira. There's no doubt in my mind that Charles is an S tier grappler. He holds the record for the most submission victories in UFC history with around 16. There's a reason why top fighters like Chandler, Dustin, and Justin avoided to go down with him. Only elite grapplers have managed to survive against Oliveira, and even then they have showed hesitation at times. Oliveira is an old school pull guard fighter. He has a lot of tricks in his sleeves like arm bars, triangle chokes. He's easy to take down because he wants you to be in his guard, where he's consistently threatening with submissions, effectively avoiding strikes from less dominant positions. Right now, he's considered the jiu-jitsu GOAT. On top of that, he's huge for 155, man. But yeah, man, I love me some Charles, man. He obviously deserves that S tier. Up next, we have Merab Dvalishvili. And to be honest, I think he's a bit overrated when it comes to his grappling skills. I honestly think the only reason why he's good is due to the EPO in his system. And it's quite obvious. Everyone he's taken down immediately always gets back up. Merab's insane EPO-fueled cardio overwhelms his opponents, which is why I can't rank him either at S or A. He rarely finishes people on the ground and struggles to control his opponents, relying instead on spamming takedowns to overwhelm his opponent. That's why I'm gonna place him in B tier. Moving on, we have Mateusz Gamrot. Now, I'm not gonna lie, Gamrot is boring as hell, but I will give him this. He has some of the best chain wrestling in the UFC. Gamrot shoots singles, climbs for the body locks, rolls out of dangerous positions, and never runs out of gas. However, his recent opponents have still been able to get back up their feet, but he ultimately wins by decision. I'm gonna give Gamrot a B tier at best. I was very close to giving him an A tier, I will say that. Up next, we have Arman Tsarukyan. He's a physical specimen with a lot of raw natural talent and athleticism. It's actually quite impressive that at the age of 22 and 25, he gave both Islam and Gamrot some of the toughest fights of their career. Taking down fighters like Islam and Ramos is an achievement in itself, and his ground and pound against Charles was nice, man, even though he nearly got caught in a submission twice. The thing with Arman is that normally when he takes his opponents down, they don't get up, and Arman throws some massive bombs. This guy is easily in the A tier, no doubt about it. Up next, we have Islam Makhachev. Islam is an S tier grappler, and look, I know what you're gonna say. The dude can barely even submit Dustin, okay? And hear me out, okay? Dustin, he had plot armor that night, okay? Obviously, he was grinding really hard on his grappling defense during camp, and it paid off big time. Not to mention that Islam had staph infection that night. And I gotta be honest, Islam is a phenomenal grappler. Obviously, he doesn't have the same wrestling like Khabib did. If anything, Khabib's wrestling was maxed out when it came to stats, But I would argue that Islam has the better submission attempts. The dude submitted Charles Oliveira with an arm triangle. And I feel like people are forgetting how unstoppable Oliveira was at that point. Let's not forget that he also had a beautiful sweep to drop Dustin and get him in a darts. The guy also out-grappled a young Arman Tsarukyan as well. The dude is one of the best grapplers in the UFC, okay? You cannot deny that. The dude deserves the S tier. Up next, we have Henry Cejudo. Now, this might be a bit controversial, but hear me out. Henry, in my opinion, is a D tier grappler when it comes to MMA grappling. The thing is, MMA wrestling is different from freestyle wrestling, and this was evident when he fought Aljo. Aljo is a really good grappler and quite underrated, while Merab, on the other hand, was able to overwhelm Henry. Now, let's be honest. When was the last time you seen Henry out-grapple someone? The closest one that comes out of my mind would be Marlon Moraes. But Marlon tends to crumble under pressure. That's why I have to rank Henry in the D tier for MMA grappling at least. Now, as a freestyle wrestler, phenomenal. But as an MMA grappler, he has good takedown defense. His offensive wrestling isn't that good, man. So in my opinion, he's D tier. Next up, we have Brian Ortega. Ortega now is incredible once he takes you down to the mat with his BJJ. Most of the time, he can submit you, which is crazy. I mean, just look how he managed to get Volk in that tight ass guillotine. Obviously, it didn't work out. Then he managed to transition to a triangle choke. Now, the only reason why Alex didn't get submitted that night is pretty obvious. It's because he has no neck. Besides that, Ortega has submitted almost everyone once he takes the fight to the ground. Ortega is A tier. Now, I wanted to give him an S tier, but I just can't. Ortega has been trying to box more than use his jiu-jitsu, which is honestly very frustrating. Because if he focused more on his grappling, especially the takedowns and clinching to take the fights to the ground, he would be pretty unstoppable. It bothers me that he hasn't been doing that enough. I know he did it with Yair, but that was just one time. Up next, we have none other than Kamaru Usman. Now, Usman is also gonna be an A tier, even though he lacks a lot of submissions. At one point, this dude was just able to take you down and just hold you down. Same thing when it came to the fence, man. Usman relies a lot on his strength, and he was arguably every BJJ's nightmare. He was just manhandling everybody, and at one point, his takedown defense was incredible. And just in general, it was hard to submit this dude. I mean, ask Hamzat. So yeah, obviously he's an A tier. Up next, we have the Funk Master himself, Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is an S tier grappler, dude. The dude was able to out-grapple Peter Yan, literally killed Corey Sandhagen in less than a round, man. And how can we forget that this man dominated Kelvin Cater? Aljo's grappling is amazing, man. Especially when he gets your back on that body lock triangle, then it's pretty much over for you. And I truly believe he's going to go on a crazy run in featherweight. Because he's proven that there's a huge skill gap between bantamweight and featherweight. And there's not really that many grapplers in that weight class that can give him that many problems. Aljo is phenomenal. That's why he's an S tier. Up next, we have none other than Gilbert Burns. Okay, this might be a bit controversial. I'm aware that Gilbert Burns has phenomenal BJJ, okay? But I can't recall the last time he submitted someone. And don't tell me he submitted Neil Magny. That dude's a jobber. That doesn't count. The last time this dude finished someone on the ground was this guy named Mike Davis. And look, I'm aware that he out-grappled Wonderboy and Woodley, but he still couldn't finish either of those guys. That's wild. Gilbert Burns is gonna go on the C tier, man. Up next, we have Anthony Smith. I'm gonna be honest with you, I think his BJJ is kind of overrated. I'm aware that he submitted Vitor Petrino, but Vitor Petrino is dumb, bro. He practically gave Smith that win, okay? But majority of the grapplers that fought Smith have over-grappled him. And the people who out-grappled Anthony Smith were none other than Magomed Ankalaev, Alexander Rakic, Glover Teixeira, Roman Dolizzi, John Jones. Come on, man. You can't submit a decent grappler at best? Smith, you are officially overrated. You are in the D tier. Up next, we have Gelton Almeida. Gelton is a phenomenal heavyweight grappler. To be fair though, he's only been killing a lot of these fat, overweighted heavyweights. I don't know how well his grappling does in the top 5. I mean, we kind of seen it with Curtis, but Curtis isn't really anything special with his wrestling, but he was able to neutralize it. But I have to see more from Gelton Almeida. But yeah, his grappling seems good. The way he's just able to submit these dudes, it's pretty impressive. But I'm gonna have to put him in the B tier. Up next, we have none other than Paul Craig. Low-key, a very underrated grappler, especially when it comes to his BJJ. The dude is kind of like a Kraken, you know what I'm saying? He just usually jumps up and gets the kill sometimes. I mean, after all, this dude was able to get some big wins like submit Magomed Ankalaev, Jamal Hill, Kroloff, but he's a one-trick pony, you know? I will give him this, though. His grappling is good, though. But, yeah, underrated, man, when it comes to the jiu-jitsu. The dude is an A tier. Up next, we have none other than Colby Covington. Colby is A tier. Colby's chain wrestling is way better than Usman. He doesn't rely on strength. He relies more on his unlimited cardio and the way he's able to put his body on top of you, making you tired and trying to go for the rear naked chokes attempts. And he just tries his best to keep you down. Obviously, it hasn't shown recently since that Leon fight, but he was able to take out a bunch of dudes like Jorge Masvidal, Tyrone Woodley, Robbie Lawler, RDA. You know, it really says a lot. His grappling is pretty good, you know, unless you watch his last performance against Leon Edwards. But Covington overall is a phenomenal grappler when it comes to MMA. Up next, we have Pantoja. Pantoja is none other than an S tier grappler. And look, man, the reason why I'm putting him up here is simple. He just out-grapples everybody. This is the weight class of 125, man. These guys are like stick bros. They should be able to get back up on the feet. But Pantoja has the best scrambles. I mean, the dude literally out-grappled Alex Perez, and the same thing could be said about Brandon Royval. Pantoja is that good when it comes to control time too. So yeah, the guy is S tier, man. Up next, we have John Jones. And look, man, even though I can't stand the dude is a phenomenal wrestler slash grappler. I don't even have to explain why. This guy is just so good. He's already on S tier, man. The dude literally obliterated Ciryl Gane in his last fight, and his resume speaks for itself. So yeah, I don't really have to explain it. The dude's obviously in the S tier. Moving on, we have Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat is an A tier. He's probably a future S tier, if I can be honest with you. The dude was able to submit Wonder Boy by a rear naked choke, something that Gilbert Burns couldn't do, and submit Jeff Neal by a rear naked choke. Dude's top control is crazy, and I don't think I've seen anybody get up from Shavkat. He's huge for that weight class, and obviously he's very underrated when it comes to his grappling. So yeah, an A tier sounds appropriate. Up next, we have none other than the boringest fighter in the UFC, and that's obviously Belal Muhammad. And look, guys, I ain't gonna lie, he's actually a pretty good wrestler. Belal controls majority of the fights once he takes them down, like Vicente Luque, and I honestly can't tell you the rest because they all went to unanimous decision, and I ended up falling asleep in majority of his fights. But Belal, he's pretty good besides that, so I'm just gonna put him in the B tier. Up next, we have none other than Kelvin Gastelum. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I think his wrestling is trash. The dude got out-grappled and submitted by Chris Weidman, Jack Hermanson, and Sean Brady. I think, if I'm not mistaken either, he got controlled a bit by Neil Magny. I personally don't care for Gastelum that much, but I don't know, man, you're getting out-grappled like that, I can't really put you that high, bro. You're gonna be on the D tier. Up next, we have none other than Robert Whittaker. Now, Whittaker has really good wrestling. He doesn't really do any submissions, and I don't think he does any ground and pound. And I honestly think his top control isn't the greatest, and obviously his takedown defense is incredible. And Whittaker has really good takedowns too, but like I mentioned earlier, his top control isn't anything too good. So I'm gonna be nice. I can't really put Whittaker on the C tier, so I'm gonna put him on the B tier. Up next, we have Umar Nurmagomedov. Bro, his last name is freaking Nurmagomedov. That's an automatic A tier. He is good at chain wrestling, positioning, and he's able to last nasty ground and pound. But I'm not one of those fans that think his style is boring. So I expect to see a lot of negative feedback based on this 1 second lapse in his defense. You know, that fight recently where he got dropped. But the dude is phenomenal. And I think he's going to change the entire bantamweight division. Up next, we have Leon Edwards. I would put Leon in B tier. Leon doesn't have anything too special when it comes to his grappling. I mean, okay, he was able to take down Usman, but I always thought in my mind Usman wasn't expecting that. And I believe he took Covington down too, but Covington was able to win majority of the exchanges. So I really feel like B is really appropriate for Leon. Up next, we have Ilia Topuria. So Topuria really doesn't use much of his grappling as much as he used to. He fell more in love with his hands, as we all know. Before he came to the UFC, he had a lot of finishes. I believe they were all submission related, if I'm not mistaken. Ilia has phenomenal BJJ, but it hasn't been used on high level MMA fighters. So because of that, I will give him a B tier, just to be safe in the meantime. Up next, we have Beneil Dariush. He has good BJJ, man. I mean, the way he was just able to stop Gamrot was impressive, or how he was able to armbar Drew Dober, but in the same time, he got out-grappled by freaking Michael Chiesa. I don't know, man. That's a really bad look if you ask me. He hasn't really had any high-level submission victories recently. I know he locked that leg or ankle lock on Tony, but that didn't finish the fight. And it's not really that impressive. I mean, at this point, who hasn't submitted Tony? So I'm going to put him in the C tier. Up next, we have none other than Peter Yan. And to be honest, his grappling's okay. I mean, it's the thing that makes him fully well-rounded, just to have the ability to take the fight to the ground. He doesn't have any crazy ground and pound or any type of submissions, but it's useful. So I'm going to put him also on the C tier. Up next, we have Curtis Blades. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think he's C tier. Obviously, his takedown defense is good, but he usually gets on top of you, you know what I'm saying? He doesn't really do too much most of the time, and he'll win by unanimous decision. His takedown defense seems good as well, but it looks like if you took Curtis down on his back, he looked like he would be a turtle on his back. Obviously, we haven't seen him in that position yet, because there's not too many high-level grapplers in the heavyweight division, so that's why I'm going to put him on C tier. Up next, we have none other than Tom Aspinall. Tom is a freaking A tier, man. The way he's able to take opponents down and submit them is pretty impressive, especially with his BJJ skills. They are very high. I mean, this dude has submitted guys in the first and second round, and he's obviously pretty good at it, and he's fast. There's not really much to say about this guy, so yeah, Tom is an A tier. Up next, we have Evloev. Probably one of the most boringest grapplers in the UFC, if you ask me. He's the only fighter in the UFC that has any undefeated streak and has no finishes in the UFC. The dude is phenomenal. And yeah, he's pretty much the featherweight version of Bilal. He just takes them to decision, so yeah, A tier. Anyways, moving on, we have Diego Lopez. Diego is a phenomenal grappler. The dude has shown a ton of submissions that he can throw. He showed this in his debut against Evloev and Gavin Tucker. And we even seen this dude almost submit Dan Ige. We honestly haven't seen enough of him, but I would like to believe that his skills are in A tier level, man. I mean, the dude just came to the UFC and almost submitted Evloev. I would say you're pretty good, man. This dude is A tier. Up next, we have Magomed Ankalaev. This dude is D tier. He's honestly overrated. I feel like his grappling is overrated. I feel like a lot of people think he's really good just because he's freaking Dagestanian. And first of all, you're racist. And second of all, the dude has decent grappling at best. And when he takes his opponents down, it's nothing too special. He's been fighting a lot of cans who don't have good grappling defense. And when he does face somebody that's actually good in the ground, he got submitted. This was shown in the Paul Craig fight, so I'm going to put this dude in D tier. And the last fighter we have in this list is Bo Nickel. And look, I'm aware of Bo Nickel's credentials in wrestling, but I'm going to be real with you. It hasn't really been translating as well as we thought it was going to. I mean, in his last fight, he was struggling just to take the guy down. And I know he's young, let's give him some time. I'm aware of that, but he's been here in the UFC for like 2 or 3 years and he's still fighting cans and he's still semi-struggling with them. I don't know, man. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to throw him a bone in the meantime. I'm gonna put him in C tier. Anywho, that is my official tier list for the best grapplers. Obviously, I couldn't put everyone, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, let me know in the comments down below. But overall, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like always, guys, I'll see you on my next one.